Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome viewers to another episode of Our Britain. As you are very familiar, and particularly if you're regular watchers of this program, regular viewers of this program, I'm sure you know the format of the program. Every week, every Monday, 5 minutes past 7, only on Noor TV, in Our Britain, we have new faces, new subjects, new topics affecting and reflecting all our communities here in the United Kingdom and of course around the world. And for that special reason, we have a very special guest here in the studio who for most of his life has been working with the local community in Birmingham and around the United Kingdom. Just before I introduce my guest, as always, I want to thank Hazrat Qibla Pir Noor al-Arifin Sahab. May Allah give Hazrat Sahab further strength and energy to work for all our communities, and may Allah also bless him with further knowledge, and may Allah reward him for the platform that he has given us here on Noor TV, particular Our Britain. With those prayers, I would also like you to keep praying for Hazrat late Qibla Pir Allahuddin Siddiqui Rahmatullah Alayhi. May Allah bless Hazrat Sahab the highest place in Jannat. Ameen, Summa Ameen. Viewers, this evening's program will be talking particular about apprenticeships here in the United Kingdom. Of course, this is a very interesting subject, very interesting topic, particular for parents whose children are about to leave school, are about to enter college or university, or maybe they're about to enter the world of employment. So for those parents, and particular for children 16 onwards, this is going to be a very interesting program. Many of your questions will be answered in this program by my special guest, and just as I said, before I do that, as in always in my programs, I give you some facts and figures, and this evening I have facts and figures from The Guardian. This is a very recent report from The Guardian taking place in January 2018, which clearly states that apprenticeships may force radical rethink of UK policy, meaning and stating that there is a fall in apprenticeships may force radical rethink of UK policy. In fact, what they have said is apprenticeships, 27% of apprenticeships fall in the number taking up trainee posts in the last quarter of 2017. And that's a dramatic fall, just within the last 12 months or so. They have also stated that number starting apprenticeships dropped to 114,000 between August and October, down from 155,700 in the same period in 2016. So viewers, something is not right. We have government schemes, whether it's this government or whether it's been previous governments or the future governments, regardless who's in control and who's in power. But we always hear apprenticeships are a very good way of promoting our children, a very good way of taking hands-on experience when it comes to work and so on. In fact, in some of the reports that I have in front of me, some of the reports, particularly the one in The Guardian, which I have in front of me now, again, this is the very latest one in March 2018, are even stating that more and more youngsters are now entering apprenticeships rather than to go on to full-time education, university level of education. However, I totally agree with that, but at the same time, we are getting figures of nearly from 155,000 to 114,000. I believe that's about between 35 to 40,000 people dropping just in 1 year. So something is not right. With those words, I have another report which also states some of these apprenticeships who actually decide to go into apprenticeship. It says in The Guardian's headlines, apprenticeships pay, but you're not rich yet. And what they're basically saying is that people who start apprenticeships, they start from low as £3.70 an hour. This is totally unbelievable. How can Yes, I understand it might be somebody 16, 17, 18, 19, we're talking about young men, young women, but still £3.70 an hour. How can one live on £3.70 an hour in this current climate that we're in? Also, the lowest paid worker, the lowest paid apprenticeships were in hairdressing. Yes, viewers, in hairdressing particular, £3.47 an hour. That's all they were paid. And if we carry on, apprenticeship for childcare, £2.73. That's all they were paid, through £2.73. And if I go further on, in London, for example, if you worked for transport for London apprenticeships, your starting salary would be £17,802 a year. Now we're talking about the capital, we're talking about London. How can one live on £17,000 in London when average, your rent is about 17, but probably more actually, to be honest, in London? How is this individual going to survive on £17,000, particularly if they're paying rent, if they're paying other living standards? So these are some of the figures. As I said, I have many other figures, but due to time, it's going to be impossible for me to go on with these figures. But I'm sure my guest in the studio will answer to the best of his ability. And just before I introduce him, neither myself, neither my guest or Noor TV is responsible for any advice or support or guidance which we provide to you in Ava Britain. Please seek your independent advice. First and foremost, let me welcome my very special guest here in our studio, Safaraz Ali. Thank you very much for coming onto Noor TV, and especially thank you very much for coming into Ava Britain. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Ava Britain, sir.
Well, salam. Thank you for the opportunity, Shazad. Really appreciate that. Again, a fantastic topic that you've chosen as well, that affects a lot of parents, as you said, and majority of us in this day and age.
Safaraz, I know for many years you have been supporting many communities right across the board. You know, whether it comes to apprenticeships, whether it comes to training, and so forth. You know, this is your sort of chosen area that you specialize in. Safaraz, some very scary figures I have in front of me here. These, as you can very clearly see, have been taken from The Guardian. These are very latest, 2018. We hear companies, we hear the government promoting apprenticeships. We hear them stating that apprenticeships are on the rise. More and more people are taking apprenticeships. But to be honest with you, a report from January 2018 in The Guardian is saying a 27% fall. What's going on, Safaraz?
Okay, that's not the full picture. Obviously, it's a Guardian article. I've not had a chance to read it, but it's something that the industry, my industry, has been talking about for the last year. The apprenticeship sector has gone through a tremendous amount of change, particularly since last May 2017 to now. There's a lot of change that they've got planned. So, as you said rightly, successive governments have been talking about apprenticeships and have been talking about the positives of apprenticeships and so forth, and they've been promoting apprenticeships per se. But the way apprenticeships are badged is there's a slight misdescription to a certain extent, because one part of apprenticeship is new jobs, which is vacancies that have been created, and another part of apprenticeships, or we still call them apprenticeships, are existing employees. So apprenticeships are also work-based qualifications as well. So what we've got here is there's been a drop, but the drop hasn't been in terms of jobs created or new jobs. People actually vacancy matched.
Let me give you another statement, Safaraz, again from a source from The Guardian. It says the biggest drop came in intermediate apprenticeships, the basic level, which dropped 38% to 52,000. The highest level apprenticeships, known as degree apprenticeships, rose nearly 27% to 11,600. Schemes for adult apprenticeships were worse affected, for those young people falling by just over 30% compared with 20%. These are latest figures, sir. I mean, you referenced going back 2016, 2017. I am providing you figures here which are very latest of 2018. In fact, I have another report here which is March 2018, and I've given you figures, even though for 1 second, if we agree with your statement, but the amount of money that is being paid to these people, we're having people working for £3.70 an hour. We're having hairdressers working for £3.47, and above all, it's a disgrace for people who are working in the social care and support industry, only working at £2.73 an hour.
Yeah, so I was just going back to the first point that you've mentioned in terms of the drop in apprenticeships. So there's two types of apprenticeships. There's a vacancy match, effectively new jobs that have been created, and there's apprenticeships for existing employees. So apprenticeships have dropped. Yes, they have dropped, and the figures are correct, but that's badging everything together. Where the drop has been is with the existing employees, where previously employers were signing up existing employees that they were already employed onto a qualification. That's slightly different to a job that's been created. So there's been an increase in jobs, there's been an increase in apprenticeships, but which are effectively new jobs, a decrease in the number of people that are currently employed taking an apprenticeship, and that's mainly because of how government has changed the contribution that the employer has to pay.
Safaraz, for 1 second,
Yeah.
many viewers are watching this program. You know, we're talking about 170 countries around the world which are watching this program, right? You know, our Britain has a very high viewership, right, around the United Kingdom,
Yeah.
particularly around the United Kingdom. Is it fair to say, or do you personally believe, being in this profession and being in this environment for many years, £3.47 an hour for a hairdresser, £2.73 to work in childcare industry?
The rates that you've mentioned are slightly below the actual apprenticeship minimum wage. So there's an apprenticeship minimum wage which is currently £3.50, which is rising to £3.70 in April this year. So I'm not sure how they've worked out those particular rates, but there is a minimum, just like there's a national living wage, national minimum wage, there's also a minimum rate for apprenticeships, and that starts presently at £3.50 an hour. So there shouldn't be any employers that are paying less than that, and if they are, they're actually breaking the law.
For 1 second, even if I agree with you, as I said, this report that I've got in front of me is from March 2018 from The Guardian. However, you're saying it's 350. They've stated here, you know, they've given an example of one hairdressing, you know, apprenticeship in hairdressing at 347, and then they've given a further example, you know, of £2.73 in the childcare. So even, for example, if the viewers agree with you for over a couple of pence up and down, do you still believe it's fair?
Let me say to you, Shazad, at the moment they say the actual average wage in the country is around £27,000. That's that's the quoted figure in a lot of publications, £27,000. They say the graduate wage is approximately £26,000 to £30,000. But most people actually, in terms of actually mean average, are earning a lot less than that. There's a lot of graduates who are underemployed, who are not even receiving, in some cases, half of that. So in terms of comparisons, it depends on the individual. It depends on obviously companies, and there's a lot of factors involved. But that's a benchmark which is really a floor level in terms of earnings, and that is a floor level. So there's a lot of employers out there, good employers, large organizations who have taken on the apprenticeship scheme, similar to that. They had a graduate scheme, they're now taking on an apprenticeship scheme where the actual starting wage is anything between £16,000 and £24,000. So
let me just take you to the capital, for let's go all the way to London, right to the capital.
You've mentioned the 17,000.
Of course, £17,802 a year. This is another example for somebody who's going to start apprenticeship for transport for London.
Yeah.
How is this individual going to live on £17,000 in the capital?
Well, there's two parts of it that we need to separate. It's not about the apprenticeship, it's actually about the actual wage itself. So that you've got a London living wage, which, that particular apprenticeship rate is a lot higher than that. So, I don't want to mix the fact that, you've got national minimum wage and you've got laws in terms of minimum pay with the benefits of apprenticeship and, the fact that, this is government pay rates. So, the 17,000 is above the London living wage, effectively, in that particular example that you've stated.
Okay.
But it is an opportunity for people to get onto the career ladder. You've also got to think the fact that when you're on an apprenticeship program, you've got 20% of the job training. You're learning and you're earning. It's developing your career. In some cases, you've mentioned previously that there's an increase in higher degree apprenticeships. So again, if you think about the higher degree apprenticeships, you're comparing that with alternative avenues, which is in some cases degree. So if you compare it with degree qualification, then it's a much better deal.
So, Safaraz, very briefly,
Yeah.
I'm sure many viewers will agree with your statements. Many will, many won't. As I said, the figures that I have presented to you basically are very up-to-date figures, and they're very clearly stating that there's a 27% drop in apprenticeships, according to the sources that we have. Anyway, keeping this on one side, very briefly, for those viewers that are watching us, particular parents, you know, who are less fortunate, especially with speaking with English, and you know, the English is not at that level that maybe yours and mine is. Can you briefly explain what does apprenticeship mean? What is apprenticeship? The term apprenticeship, what does that mean?
Okay. Shazad, just briefly on the previous point, I mean, I haven't disagreed with the figures. All I've said is that the way the figures are presented, it shows a drop, but in reality, there's an increase in terms of new jobs that have created. But the drop has been with existing employees, which are training.
You see,
so it's not a case of not disagreeing with those figures.
Not at the end of the day, you know, like I said, it's our job to represent you with the sources. However, you know, this is your opinion. The matter of fact is, when we've got viewers now watching this program, particular when we've got youngsters, when I'm talking 16 plus, you know, when they hear these stories about apprenticeship on the rise, the governments, you know, previous, future, present governments, whoever is in control or in power, you know, pushing people forward, particular youngsters, to come and go for apprenticeships. But when they, at the same time, hear figures like this, that apprenticeship is falling, you know, they're in two minds. If you follow me, they're probably thinking, hold on, we're getting some different figures and sources from one part of, you know, information that they're getting from maybe colleges, maybe schools, maybe, you know, people like yourselves who are professions in this environment, in this work. But at the same time, they're getting figures that maybe we shouldn't go for apprenticeship. Maybe we should go on for further education. Maybe we should go on to university. Why should we go for apprenticeship when we're only going to get paid £3.40? We're rather off better working at Tesco's or something like that. Do you follow me? So we always have two sides of the coin, where we have to discuss the advantages and the disadvantages. But anyway, we're going back to the point, what does apprenticeship mean, Safaraz, for those people who are watching us?
Okay. Apprenticeship is actually an opportunity for somebody to earn and learn. So effectively, they're in a workplace environment, and they're onto a program, a scheme, which is there to develop their skills in that chosen field that they're in. So effectively, you're in a full-time job, and at the same time, you're studying. And the study will revolve around certain frameworks, certain standards, which will then give you a qualification, which will allow you then to progress in your chosen field. Apprenticeships have had an overall change in terms of the outlook. A lot of professional bodies now recognise apprenticeships, and effectively you can become qualified in certain areas, such as an accountancy profession, in other areas on an apprenticeship framework. A lot of companies, Shazad, have embraced apprenticeships in terms of their schemes, allowing people to actually develop skills across across a range of areas, and really similar to the graduate schemes before. You've got multinational companies, you've got national companies that have got apprenticeship frameworks that they've created. On
average, Safaraz, how long do apprenticeships last for on average?
So the minimum period for an apprenticeship would be 12 months and a day. Most apprenticeships are around 18 months. So it depends on the levels. You mentioned it previously, intermediate level, you've got advanced, and you've got higher degree, higher apprenticeships as well. So it really does depend on the actual qualification area. It also depends on the employer and their framework that they have. So there's a lot of change that can occur in terms of actually the framework and the benchmarks that are there.
Many viewers will probably, now that you've touched upon the levels, I think we'll just emphasize a bit more on that point. Levels of apprenticeship. What's the basic level it starts from? Does it go in numbers? Does it go in letters? Or how does this system work for those people who are not familiar with this?
Yeah. So there's been overall in terms of how so there used to be called level 2, now that's called an intermediate apprenticeship. So it's very similar to GCSEs. They've changed how GCSEs are, so A's and now 9 and so forth. The similar level 2 is now an intermediate. So then you've got advanced, which is the level 3, and then you've got your higher levels, which are your degree level, higher degree, higher apprenticeships as well. So you've got really three main levels.
So basically 2 and 3 is intermediate, is that what you're saying?
So Yeah. So
Right.
your intermediate is level 2.
Right.
Yeah, advanced is level 3, and then you're going into sort of.
And then I believe you have a level 4, 5, 6, and then you have a level 7 as well, I believe.
Yeah,
Is
so
that
you've got a
correct?
higher, and then you've got a degree as well.
Right. So if we're going at level 4, 5, 6, we're talking about a degree level.
So you're talking about management type qualifications. So that
Okay.
could be a health and social care qualification. It could be a management level qualification. It could
Okay.
be a professional type qualifications as well. So most of the apprenticeships that are, you also talked about a drop in the sort of lower level, the level 2s, because that's mainly the case that most apprenticeships now are at a higher level. So a lot of managers, a lot of sort of leadership courses are now frameworked around an apprenticeship program.
And level 7, I believe, is
They're the sort of degree level qualifications.
Okay.
A lot of universities now have embarked on an apprenticeship framework as well. So what you'll find is where previously universities were specifically talking about academic routes, they've listened to employers, they've listened to sort of governments, and also sort of the agenda as well in terms of the skills gap, and they've actually changed some of their methodology to embrace what the employers want, particularly what the large employers want. So they've taken on degree apprenticeships.
Just before we go into a commercial break, we've talked about young children 16 plus who get into apprenticeship, but there's going to be many adults who are probably thinking, can we get into apprenticeship as well? Can adults do apprenticeships as well, or is it just for children? Is it just for youngsters leaving school?
So anybody from the age of 16 plus onwards, so there's no limit in terms of age group. Most apprenticeships are for the people over the age of 24. Most apprenticeships currently are management level apprenticeships, degree level, leadership level apprenticeships, and over the age of 24 is the majority of apprenticeships presently.
And are these apprenticeships funded by the government, or does one has to pay individual
So the apprenticeship
from their own pocket?
So the apprenticeship framework, there's one which is about jobs, and there's one which is about a qualification. So the qualification apprenticeship route is where the majority of the numbers are in terms of over 24. All apprenticeships are co-funded, so there's an employer contribution that's required. So it depends now in terms of the size of the business. So if they're an SME business, small and medium-sized employer, then 90% is funded by the government. So it's co-funded. 10% contribution is required by the individual employer. If it's a levy employer which has got a payroll of more than £3 million, then they can actually use their levy pot to pay for the program. But the qualification itself will be co-funded by the employer, so the employer has to contribute.
Okay. One final question, but what we'll do is we'll go into the break, and I have so many questions here, as you can see in front of me. Whether we will get through all of them in our Britain this evening, I'm not too sure, but we'll try our best. Viewers, we're just going to go on a very short commercial break. Keep watching New TV, keep watching our Britain. See you back very shortly.